The German invasion of USSR, also known as Operation Barbarossa. Germany invaded Russia on June 22, 1941. It was the largest military operation of the war. Before the invasion, Hitler and Stalin made a pact called the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. It was a treaty that called a peace between the two countries during the invasion of Poland. This treaty was signed on August 23, 1939. A year later, Hitler made the secret plan named Operation Barbarossa, which was a plan to invade Russia. The Germans prepared greatly by grouping their Einsatzgruppen, which is the SS Mobile Killing Unit. The SS are elite German shock troopers. Not only that, but they had about 134 fighting divisions at the ready with another 73 behind front lines as extra divisions. So, on June 22, 1941, the German forces invaded the Soviet Union. After the start of the invasion, 3 million troops went into Russia with a buff of 650,000 soldiers from their allies. The Germans and their allies' 1st Battalion of soldiers stretched from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. For the first months of the invasion, the Russian forces were getting annihilated. Russian forces were getting cut off, and their supply lines were getting destroyed. Once Germany got to the cities and towns, that's where we see the complete ruthlessness of the German forces. SS soldiers launched mass murdering attacks where little to zero people would survive. The Russians kept on getting pushed back and losing battle after battle. Then in August 1941, Himmler's representatives arrived with more reinforcements to concentrate attacks on Soviet Jewish communities. Also, Hitler came up with a final solution, which was a plan to deport all Jewish people to Russia since so many Jews were being killed there. Everything was going well for Germany's offensive until the winter of 1941. The German forces were exhausted, plus food and supplies could not arrive because of their long supply line. So the Soviet forces launched a huge counterattack. This offensive pushed German forces away from Moscow for a little while. But the German forces launched their attack again in the summer of 1942. They reached the outskirts of Stalingrad but failed to attack, which brought the end of Operation Barbarossa.
Hitler took his own life as well as his wife, who also took her own life. Hitler took hydrogen cyanide and then shot himself on the right side of his head. And finally, his soldiers poured petrol on him and lit him on fire. In 1970, he was cremated and his ashes were scattered. Hitler's wife was also set on fire with him. All of this happened from the time 1600, which is 4 o'clock p.m. normal time, to 1815, which is 6:15 normal time. On May 1st, a radio station interrupted their normal broadcast to announce the death of Hitler. That same day, Stalin was informed about the death of Hitler. The Red Army Intelligence Unit knew that Stalin would want the dead body of Hitler and would be very upset if it was not found or given to him. Moscow had declared the announcement of Hitler's death. Finding his body was now a political issue. May 3rd, the bodies of 6 children were found dead in their bunk beds, and they say that this was because of Hitler's death. The same day, the body of a man was found in the Chancellery Garden. The body had a small mustache and diagonally combed hair. However, he also had on darned socks, and Smersh decided that Adolf Hitler would never wear darned socks, so concluded that the body was not Hitler's. How the body got there still remains a mystery.
In July 1942, the Nazi army bombs the Soviet city of Stalingrad, launching one of the bloodiest battles in history. The German army surrounded the city of Leningrad and extended the siege beginning that September. The city sought to establish supply lines from the Soviet interior and evacuate its citizens, often using a hazardous ice and water road across Lake Ladoga. One of the successful land corridor was created in January 1943. The Red Army finally managed to drive off the Germans from the following year. The Germans maintained their siege with a single army, and defending the Soviet forces numbered less than 15% of their total strength of the German-Soviet front.
The Battle of Berlin, along with the Battle of Britain, the Battle of the Atlantic, and D-Day, was of vital importance in the European sector. It was fought between April and May 1945, and the Russians' victory saw the end of Hitler's Third Reich and the occupation of the city by the Red Army before it was divided into 4. as a result of the wartime meetings between the Allies. The Battle of Berlin was primarily fought between the Germans' army and the Soviet army. The Soviet army outnumbered the Germans. The Soviets had over 2,500,000 soldiers, 6,250 tanks, and 7,500 aircrafts. The Germans had around 1 million soldiers, 1,500 tanks, and 2,200 aircrafts. By April 20th, the Soviets began bombing Berlin. They worked their way around the city and had it completely surrounded in a few days. At this point, Hitler began to realize that he was going to lose the battle. He desperately tried to move a German army from Western Germany to Berlin in order to save the city. Both lost numerous amounts of soldiers, but the Soviets were victorious.
The Battle of Stalingrad took place along the banks of the Volga River, started on July 17, 1942, and ended on February 2, 1943. This battle took place in Germany, and its allies fought the Soviet Union so they could have control of Stalingrad. A reason why this war was fought is because Germany needed oil, and it was a gateway to the oil regions of the USSR. This battle was considered one of the most bloodiest battles in history. About 2.2 million people were killed, along with 1.7 to about 2 million people were severely wounded. This battle consisted of urban streets fighting that caused ruined houses and factories starting to smell because of all the hot winds. This battle stopped Germans to advance into the Soviet Union because the Soviet forces crashed an entire German army under General Friedrich Paulus. Overall, this Soviet victory was a huge humiliation for Hitler.